Over a year ago, I walked away from my corporate job as an associate director at a big four firm, earning well over $100,000 a year. I spent over a decade chasing promotions, performing for titles, earning the respect of others, building a team, becoming known in my industry, and chasing after those bonuses. And one day I decided to just walk away from it all. I quickly learned four very important lessons during this grueling time in my life. And to be honest, this is probably the first time I am openly sharing my story because it still is quite raw and real. Was this one of the biggest regrets of my life? Let's find out. Okay, before I go into the details of why I quit my 100K a year corporate job at a big four firm, I want to share something very special with you. You probably clicked on this video because you're maybe thinking of leaving, or you want to explore what life outside corporate could look like. And there is one important thing you need to know that I see so many corporate women not truly having their finger on. And this is called the freedom number. Now, I have created a freedom number formula worksheet for you to know in under 60 minutes. And honestly, you can actually do this in under 10 minutes if you know your numbers, for you to know the exact number you need to be working towards to make your corporate job optional. Yes, I said optional. There is no need for you to be at the mercy of a paycheck, but your freedom number is truly going to be your North Star if you really want to embark on this journey with intention and create results. So if you're ready to find out what your freedom number is, I have dropped the link to the freedom number formula worksheet in the comments below, in the description below, and it is completely complimentary. So grab it, work it out, share your insights with me. I would love to know what you found out from doing this exercise. Okay. Let's get back to the video. Looking back at where I started as a budding corporate professional woman, I honestly do not think I truly believed that I had what it took to get to the helm of the big four sort of corporate ladder, which is eventually making partner. And I remember early on in my career, I used to look at these people and be like, wow. I honestly used to think that they had sort of godlike features, like they could walk on water, because of all the stories, we were told, especially as newbies and analysts in the first firm I worked in, of, how hard it is, if not almost impossible, to make partner. And I dedicated my life, sort of my life's work for more than a decade, was making sure that I climbed the corporate ladder. And I did so, step by step, worked my way up from analyst to manager to senior manager to director, associate director. And at some point, actually was before I made associate director, when I had my twins, I knew that I was made for more. But somehow I just felt obligated, or I felt like I needed to prove to myself and to others that I had what it took to get to the top, and I was going to, get there come rain or sunshine, right? And I was paying a cost, right? There was a cost to that. And I know that there's this picture that we like to paint as women, especially as ambitious women. And I am not in any way trying to judge anyone, because I have done this a lot too. And we like to talk about how you can do it all. You can climb up the corporate ladder and still be an incredibly successful mom, or an incredibly great mom with, great relationship with your kids. But the truth is, you only have 24 hours every single day to do all those things. And if you're dedicating 10 to 12 to 14 hours, I have literally had a partner tell me that he works 14 hours a day, and he was saying it proudly. And so if you're going to spend 14 hours of your day dedicated towards your corporate career, there is a price that you're going to pay. And for most people, as I was just being observant of the life of these partners that I was aspiring to become, for most of them, the price that they were paying was their children, the quality of the life that they were living. And I knew that that was not going to be the story of my life. So I kind of just continued on, hoping that, I would one day make partner, and then 6 months later I would be like, I'm out of here. That is obviously not how my story happened, as you saw in the title of this video. And when I made associate director, that was when sort of the penny started to drop, like one by one by one. And I started to get so many more clues, or what I call gifts from the universe and God, that yeah, this is not the life. And it definitely was not sort of how it was painted from the outside, particularly when it comes to the pay, right? And even though the pay was so good, like no matter how much you're getting paid by an employer, it is never going to be enough. You're never going to feel free, because intrinsically, the corporate system requires you to trade your labor and your time, which costs freedom. Right. So no matter how much money you're earning, there is still going to be that price of freedom that you're going to pay, and potentially other values that you hold dear. For me, my values are family, fun, freedom, and travel. Your girl loves traveling. And I was giving up all of those things as I was climbing up this ladder, this, proverbial one definition of success, which is sort of ingrained in you when you are working in the Big Four, which is making partner at any and all costs. And so I stayed, continued to make these sacrifices. I still remember being called into meeting at school. And I think that was when I knew, okay, this is getting serious. And I was being called because my son was experiencing anxiety. He had just joined a new school, and the teachers were really concerned. And I remember getting into that meeting and I just broke down, because I just felt such a wave of guilt that I had pursued this dream of getting to the top of my career. But at what cost was I doing it at? And that was one of the sort of very real and vivid moments when I could tangibly see the costs that I was paying, right? Because a lot of these costs you probably are maybe invisible until later on when your kids are much older. And I'm so grateful that God showed this to me and brought that experience into my life, because that is when I started to get really serious. I was like, okay, I need to make my way out of here. And I think energetically I was probably emitting those signs that I was not going to stay. But when it came to performance, I was still leading my team. I was still, putting in the hours. I was still doing the travel. In fact, one of the last few months of my corporate career, I stayed in a hotel for more nights than I stayed in my room. Like, that is insane. That is insane. And I still remember on one of the days, I don't even know how my son knew how to do it, but he actually FaceTimed me as I was going into a meeting. And oh my goodness, I felt so bad. I felt so bad that my son is FaceTiming me because I haven't spent good time with him for a long time, because I've just been continuing this treadmill. Like, it's like you're just feeding this beast that never gets full, because you're only as good as your last performance rating in your corporate career. And one day I woke up and I was told, you're a low performer. And 6 months before, I was at the top. I was a top performer. I had unlocked the biggest bonus of my career, and I just couldn't understand how in 6 months the tables had turned, and I needed to now make a decision, because until that point, I still had this grand 2-year exit plan. There were more properties I wanted to acquire. I wanted to sort of build my passive income to a certain level. And at that point, I knew, okay, I am not going to continue doing this at the cost of my well-being, because at that time, I was living for the weekends, to be honest. Even though from a performance point of view, or, I was showing up, doing all the things, supporting my team, continuing to really be dedicated to like building a strong team, which is where I feel my strength is. And it's also in my human design, hint, hint. And I just couldn't believe how the tables had turned so fast. But then at the same time, I knew, okay, I need to do something, because this is what I want to do eventually anyway. It's just that the timeline has been accelerated. And I'm thankful again to God that that has happened, because I probably would have dragged my feet again, just continuing to sort of feed that beast and, trying to validate myself by having these titles and, achieving these accolades at the cost of the very things that are most important to me. in my life. So I remember carrying my resignation letter in the first meeting where we're going to have a discussion around this performance and how to turn it around. And I cowed away from actually someone talked me out of resigning at the time. And he was like, don't resign, as someone senior in the firm, don't resign without another job lined up. The economy is tough. I know you're a family lady. This is not the right decision for your family. Count the costs of doing this. And I sort of felt guilty and kind of also this obligation to just continue because this is someone who had believed in me for so long in my corporate career. And now I was sort of just, bailing out. Anyway, such a bad way of making decisions, which is why I'm so thankful for human design, because now I do not make decisions under pressure. I make decisions from my inner authority, which actually I'm going to be doing a series on human design very soon. So stay tuned because this can literally transform your career, your wealth, creation path, your path to freedom. It can accelerate it if you allow it to. Okay, I digress. Let's get back. And then after 2 weeks, we had a follow-on meeting on sort of how I felt about it, about the decision. And, I just continued to maintain my position that based on my performance, I didn't believe I was a low performer, et cetera, et cetera. But the essence of this part of my grand, unexpected plot twist corporate exit was a very powerful question that I was asked by one of the senior leaders in the firm. And it's this 5-word question, which I would highly encourage you to actually just take a note down because this can unlock so many powerful insights for you. And I'm so glad that that person asked me that question instead of trying to push me to staying in order to fulfill their own interests. And it was the question, what do you really want? And the only word that could come out of my mouth at the time was freedom. Like I remember just saying freedom. I want to be free. I just want freedom so many times. And that person listened to me, which again, I'm so grateful for people like that in my corporate life because maybe we wouldn't have been sitting here right now having this conversation and sort of gave me the permission to trust that freedom didn't necessarily look like continuing to come to this corporate job that, very quickly had become something that I wasn't enjoying. I was experiencing inflammation at a level that I had never experienced in my life. I was struggling to sleep. And I knew at that point that I needed to choose me. I needed to finally say yes to me and my well-being and my values over anything external that I was trying to achieve to prove my worth, to prove that I was good enough. And at that same day, I decided, okay, I'm done. I am done with this. And the next day we flew off for our 10-year anniversary to Thailand, which was a very, very incredible way to celebrate this big decision that I had made. But what transpired after is what I did not expect. And so I was bold in knowing that I was going to, things were going to work out. I trusted. I am very faith-based. So I trusted that God was going to open pathways for me or expand the pathways that I had already created. But the fear then started to come in. Like, what if I'm not able to make money from my business, which I had started, and I started to really feel very inauthentic towards because that coaching business that I had then, the business model was based on helping women get promoted. And now I didn't buy into the system anymore. How can I help people continue to get promoted in a system I don't believe in? And I actually completely burnt that business model down and built my coaching business. And I'm still building my coaching business from the ground up with values and things that I'm actually passionate talking about, like finance, wealth creation, investing, property investing, self-mastery. And then the identity shift came in. And this probably started like 1 to 2 months afterwards. And I probably should do a separate video on the things that no one tells you about when it comes to leaving a corporate career that you've been so vested in, that you've put so much time and effort in building and growing. And now that was taken away from me. And especially in this part of the world, like 2 questions that I can guarantee you people will ask you when they meet you for the first time is, what do you do? and where do you work? And now I was having this sort of identity crisis of how to answer these questions, right? Because do I say I'm a coach? Do I say I'm a consultant? Do I say I'm an investor? Am I a full-time mom? I don't even really know. I was doing all those things, but it took me a while to own and be proud of the decision I had made. And if people ask me which company I work for, to own that I work for my company, the elevator company, and I do these incredible things, and I'm able to be there for my kids and, be at the sporting events and not have to make 500 excuses every single month of why I didn't go to the sporting gala or the swimming gala or why I didn't come to the school play and why I had to cancel the date night for the umpteenth time. And it took a minute, and I am still doing the work on being okay in my skin and in my identity without that corporate, I don't know, it's like a corporate cloud that we get so much comfort from, right? And don't realize that we're putting so much, attaching our identity to it and our worth to it, and detach that process of detachment and just being you for who you are, not for where you work, not for how much you earn, is a process in itself. Okay, if you're still listening and you're wondering, all right, she did it, how can I make this work for me? I have a guide that I want to share with you. It's called the 50 Monday Corporate Exit Guide. And in this guide, you will get very specific steps to do in the next 30 days that will set you up for confidently being able to make your paycheck optional and being able to say goodbye to your corporate job in the next 50 Mondays if you wish, right? If you want to pursue something else, just creating that choice in your career and lifestyle. So grab the link in the description below and follow the steps. Do the 30 days of your commitment towards your 50 Monday exit plan. And after 30 days, I can guarantee you will feel so much more confident that this is possible for you, and you will have started to build your runway towards your corporate liberation. Building a business is not the quickest way out of corporate, and it is definitely not the best way to plan your way out of corporate into becoming your own boss and working for yourself. In fact, I was under that whole illusion that I was going to quit and my business was going to suddenly thrive. And the truth is, most businesses don't even make it to their first year. And 80% of businesses actually do not make any money in the first 5 years. 80%. And that's a reality that I had to come face to face with, because while, my coaching business had made money before, I was now starting from scratch and building a name for myself in a new niche and leadership area. And I had to come to terms with the fact that this was going to take time. And I'm saying this because how I eventually replaced my corporate paycheck was not through business. In fact, very little of my income right now comes from my coaching business. You can actually watch this video over here where I unveil all the 7 sources of my income and how much percentage actually comes from my coaching business. So most of my income right now comes from my consulting contracts. So I have monetized my skill set that I have built over the years in my corporate career, and I still use that skill set, and I am very proud of it. In fact, for a good few months of after leaving, I kind of didn't want to talk about it because I felt that maybe it meant I didn't make it. But then I realized this is actually my biggest strength and selling point. And this is probably the best way, creating a solid recurring income, the best way to leave your job confidently without ever having to go back, and then redirecting that income into your asset and wealth system that is going to pay you over time, right? Which is the model that I'm doing and is the model that I teach my clients. So that was number one biggest lesson, and it is what I am so proud of embracing, because now my clients that I work with are able to create results so much faster without this pressure that I need to figure out a winning business idea and then I need to launch it and then I need to get investors. No, you do not need any of that. You just need to monetize your skill set, the things that you know you're good at, and create recurring income redirect that income into assets that pay you, and create wealth that way. That is so much quicker than waiting for 5 years for your business to turn around and finally start making money. Lesson number 2. Success is not in the title or in the salary. This took a huge amount of learning and unlearning for me, detaching from that identity that I had carried with me for over a decade. And human design was really the tool that helped me accelerate my self-mastery in building my own version of success. And that's really what human design is about, helping you uncover your gifts, your unique gifts to the world, your potential, and how to reach that potential in a way that fulfills you without trying to copy paste someone else's definition or version of success. The paycheck is not truly yours, my friend. And I know we know this, but I came face to face with this reality that there is no secure job. For many years in my corporate career, I saw, and sometimes I was even involved in conversations around, you know, having to let people go, right? I remember once in my previous job, which was actually not in a big four, they were going through an entire, retrenchment sort of restructuring exercise. And I was asked to list down my team members and the skills that they were good at and rank them from like highest value resource to lowest value resource. And you're just a number. I know you might want to feel so much more about yourself, but in the eyes of corporate, you are just a number, and all they owe you is a paycheck. They do not owe you a promise that they will pay you for the rest of your life. And when you come to realities with that, that's when you can truly start to be so much more intentional with your paycheck and look at it as a source of investment into the next chapter in your life. Because no one is ever going to be in corporate forever. You might be there until you reach retirement age, but at some point you are going to leave. And you might as well start working on it now, which brings me to my 4th learning lesson. Build your runway now. Build your financial runway now. So if you want to successfully leave your big four corporate job, not have to look back, or just have the option of doing something else, the financial runway is going to be one of the biggest things to unlock in order to do so, in order to do it successfully. And to be honest, while I talk about my 2-week exit plan, I was building my financial runway for about 3 years, since 3 years before I eventually submitted my resignation letter. I had started in property investing about 2 years before then. I had already taken down my first property, and I was in the process of taking down the next 2 while I was, in this process of resigning. And so I had already built the foundations of being able to independently earn outside of a corporate construct. And a lot of times you don't see that in these videos where people talk about quitting their corporate job. And I think we don't do this justice enough, but it does take preparation. And while you might want to leave in the next 6 months, the reality of your finances will determine whether that is a realistic goal or whether you might need to look for another job as a placeholder, maybe something that you are, more passionate about or more willing to stay in for another 2 years than the current place that you're working at. And there is nothing wrong with that. Nothing has gone wrong, but it's such an important reality check to do. And the best way to do that reality check is by just building your financial runway. And to the $1 million question, would I go back? A few months ago, if you asked me this question, I would say absolutely no. But right now, I feel like I have gained more wisdom, and I would answer that question differently. If circumstances required me to supplement my current income from my investments with an actual job, I would absolutely do it, and I would do it with no shame. I probably wouldn't go to my previous employer, but I would do it without feeling like I have failed, because there is no failure. If you have been courageous enough to find and explore pathways to earn and to create freedom for yourself outside of your big four corporate job, that is a success in itself. And that is something to be so proud about. And going back to a corporate job after leaving does not in any way mean you have failed. right? It just means your pathway is going to look different to what you had envisaged it to look like in the first place. So that's how I would answer that question. But definitely, given the freedom that I have now, given the flexibility that I have, even in the consulting work that I do, given that I am able to earn from my properties without having to spend hours upon hours, I am so thankful that I did it. But I definitely do not see myself back in full-time employment. I hope you have found this video helpful. And if you want to know the 3 ingredients that it takes to create a system that replaces your paycheck in under 12 months, like I did, replacing my paycheck in 5 months and now earning way more than I used to earn in my old corporate job, then I would highly recommend you watch this video where I talk about the 3 ingredients to my Rich Woman Codes methodology that is going to help you unlock that result for yourself. All right, I will see you in the next video. Ciao.